Hello everyone and welcome back um, to another video where I talk about comics, specifically the comics that I picked up on the comic book day. But last week I didn't do one, so we'll be talking about that book as well, plus the back issue I actually bought last week as well with along with this book. So so this is Superman Special number one, which, like the Action Comic Special, consists of three stories, with the first main story being, the story that ends the run from the regular team, making way for the Brian Michael Bendis run. So this, of course, closes the Thomas Gleason run. Their last trailer issue was 45, but this finally brings closure to a plot point from way back, Superman number 9, when they go to Dinosaur, when John and Superman are sent to Dinosaur Island, and they encounter Captain Storm from the Losers. So this is just basically John and Clark, going back to rescue Captain Storm. So half the issue, half the story, or most of the large part of the story does revolve around, John telling Superman that they should go back and rescue Captain Storm, because he promised. But things being like they are in superhero comics, a lot of things happen. So finally, they have some time to go and rescue him, which they do, and so the rest of the story sort of deals with Captain Storm getting used to the 21st century. Plus, finally taking the dog tag from the Losers to any relatives that they may have. And that's pretty much it. It sort of really nicely closes the their run. Listen to Thomas and the run in a happy note. Uh, and so, handing the baton to Bendis. Well, like I said, like the previous special, the Action Comic special, we actually get two more stories. One is by Mark Russell, which is completely different from the story he wrote for Action Comics, or the sort of story he actually is known for, which is more of a satirical social commentary. It was a much more emotional story, beautifully drawn by Brian Hitch, where Superman actually, you know, saves a building, or tries to save a, well, there's this a creature from Atlantis, that is attacking this building. Superman is able to safely handle the situation, but the building is badly destroyed. So he starts rescuing people. He encounters this older gentleman, who asks Superman to save his wife's these photographs, because that's, he's old, he's beginning to lose his memory, and the only thing he's got left to remember his wife are those pictures. So Superman goes back, but he finds that there's this little stray dog, or this little dog in an apartment, So he decides to save him as well, but the building is so badly damaged that it could crumble, that it's about to fall. So he rescues. He's not even able to escape the building on time, so the whole thing just collapses. But Superman is safe. He saved the dog. He was unable to save those photographs, and he gives, to the old man, this elderly man, the dog to take care of. But at the same time, it's a nice little story there. But we do get some flashbacks from Clark's youth, learning some lessons from the Kents, and it's a nice little on a natural story honoring the Kents. Now, of course, in this continuity, they're dead, but um, like the story ends, and I'm gonna quote it here. Uh, the important memories never truly desert you. In fact, they become who you are. So, in a way, it's acknowledging the Kents because they're dead, but everything Clark learned from them, all those memories he has of them and his childhood, um, are things that stay with him as well. So um, I think a lot of people are like sort of bothered by the fact that the Kents are dead, and I'm actually glad that they brought that aspect back. This goes back to the Golden Age and carried on over to the Silver Bronze Age, um, with the Kents being dead. Post crisis, we actually got the Kents back, and I always kind of felt that having the Kents alive sort of diminished Superman a bit. I even diminished the Kents a bit because they became a crutch to Superman. So every time Clark had some sort of existential problem, or some situation where he was in doubt, he would just go to the Kent farm and talk to Pa or Mal Kent. Uh, but it sort of diminished their role a little bit. It diminished Superman a bit more as well, where a grown man has to go to his mom and dad to ask for some advice, while currently we kind of see how we get to see the influence of the Kents had on Superman and how he deals with a situation and sort of goes back to the lessons that he learned. We saw it a lot in the Tomasi Gleason run, in how Clark educated John by sort of remembering things that his father did when when he was a kid, and how that would actually help him raise John. So while they're gone, they're still there, and the emphasis you kind of put is, like the final line said, everything that he learned from the Kents, all those memories are the things that stay with him and made him who he is. Unlike post Christ, where you could have that sort of thing there, but you still have the Kents where Superman would just go and ask for their help, right? So now he's much more of a self-reliant, and just thinks of, well, this situation is sort of something like this, and what would Pa do? And he would just think about that sort of thing. So it's a really good story. And then the final one is a story that revolves around the atomic skull. Um, if you read Superwoman, you know that the atomic skull ended up becoming part of the special crimes unit. After that whole first arc dealing with Lena Luthor. So because the skull helped save Metropolis, he got a pardon, and he went to work with Maggie Sawyer and the Special Crimes Unit. So in this issue, they in that story, they actually called Superman to help in a operation where they actually found this criminal called Shockwave, who actually was a is a friend of the Skull, who worked with the Skull. And so Maggie Sawyer called Superman to ask for his as backup, sort of see, because she wasn't sure where the Skull was going to go with this decision. Bringing in a friend of his. Will he in the end side with with Shockwave, or would he, stick to doing his job, which is bringing him in? So Maggie wasn't sure. She asked for Superman's help to sort of uh, control the situation if it went out of hand. Which fortunately, the Skull did the right thing, brought Shockwave in, but you can see a man who's still very resentful with Superman, and just Superman just as always hopeful and hoping that he lets his anger go and become the man that Superman believes he could be. And the Skull, it ends with a really interesting sort of last panel drawn by the Carrie Andrews. That way it's the art, where it just goes sort of like, yeah, who knows. So it sort of leaves the door open to future writers, Bendis, whoever, uh, where the Skull's story could go. Will he be a better man, or will he go back to his old ways? So it was a really great issue, a really great way of ending the current Superman era as well. A good way to sort of continue the 80th anniversary celebration of Superman. Then we got Flash War Part 1 in Flash number 47. Interesting story. So while he's still dealing with those flashes of memory, uh, consequences come to Iris, who killed Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. So the Renegades, the police force that are dedicated to stopping the Reverse Flash, come to the present to arrest Iris for the murder of the Reverse Flash. So Wally doesn't want the Renegades to take Iris away. Flash is trying to control the situation, but when you have somebody like that dresses up like Captain Cold, Commander Cold, tries to stop him, and that's what. But finally, it's Iris who takes the whole situation into her hands, and of course, decides to go with the Renegades. Of course, there's a mention of the previous meeting, which Commander Coulter said, I knew you wouldn't remember our previous meeting. So I assumed it's referring to the Geoff Johns run prior to Flashpoint, where the Renegades kind of first showed up. So they decided to go to the future, but along the way they get separated from. Why get separated from them? Turns out it was Zoom, Hunter Zolomon, who sort of drew Wally to the Flash Museum, I guess, and kind of shows him all of this. His the whole pre-Flashpoint stuff. He's waiting on the birth of his twins. Max Mercury and Impulse. What else we got here? Some other stuff here. Yeah, and of course, the birth of his kids. and here we go with their his kids costumes, behind Solomon, and tells it that they are stuck in the Speed Force. So he wants to help them, but along the way, let's see. Yeah, so Zoom tells them he and that he's gonna help Wally get his children back. Uh, so again, a lot of teases going on here, you know, with the return. I mean, we got Jesse Quick here as well, with Impulse with his kids and Impulse there. So we really so that's a huge tease. Again, still dealing with all the rebirth stuff. This book. I just hope it's not a big disappointment with the teases. Uh, I don't see any indication in the solicitations for any of this actually happening. That anything major is going to happen at the end. So we'll have to wait and see if it delivers. Right now, I'm still thinking a little bit skeptical about any of this stuff. The previous, the Batman Flash crossover was a big nothing. This could be a big nothing. Just a good way to have, Wally versus Barry, but who knows? Maybe it might be good. Next, Mira, Queen of Atlantis, issue 4, where it finally picks up. So, as you know, that last 3 issues, I've been complaining about it, not really focusing on Mira and more on the Ocean Master. But this issue finally brings the whole thing much more focused on Mira. They go to Zabel, trying to get King Nero's and the Zabelians to join them and the Atlanteans to fight the king, King Rat. Right? So they go. They actually learn that Mira is now the Queen of Atlantis. So there's a lot of negotiation. So there's trying to convince him, but behind her back, her grandmother is actually plotting to bring her down, for betraying Zabel and joining the Atlanteans. So finally things are coming together for Mira. We still have some stuff that deals with Orm. Because Tuola decides to go help Mira and Orm with the Zabelians, hoping to sort of bring Orm back after this whole mess is done, back to the surface world with his fiance and her kid, because she has seen a different side of Orm, an Orm that is much more at peace with himself. So yes, finally it's gotten much more interesting, and finally, at least in my opinion, focusing more on Mira, who is supposed to be the lead, and not with Orm, which was like the last 3 issues, as I explained on those videos. I'm actually gonna skip to Elseworld issue 7. So Elseworld issue 7. So it really picks up where it left off where the last issue left off. They're finally able to escape the sea creatures, get back on land, cross this island to the actual portal that would take them back to Earth. But unknown to them, they got a little surprise at the other side. So another fun and entertaining issue, which I finally noticed it was a bit of a quick read, but that's because it's a very compressed story. This is packed. It's very compressed. It reads very fast. It's very compressed, but very entertaining. I've definitely been enjoying this book quite a lot since it came out. That Terrifics, issue 4. Now, why did I skip from DC to elsewhere and then back? It's got to do with the back issue I picked up. So the Terrifics issue 4. So they're going to uh, uh, Phantom's Phantom's girl's planet, so that she could see her family. So they ended up being caught by some weird sort of spaceship that sort of seems to be dealing with a lot of garbage, debris, whatever, and they encounter like this ugly thing here, this sort of octopus type uh, creature. That team got separated. They took with the crew. They get back into the Mr. Terrific giant terrific sphere, T-sphere ship, and they finally get back to Phantom Girl's world planet, where she learns that, well, she believed that she had spent about 10 years in the dark multiverse. Turns out it was more like 30, as she actually encountered her mother, but quite old now. Her dad's dead, but she's finally kind of home in a weird way. Nice little ending. So uh, yeah, it was a fun read. Of course, people are talking about it was a fun little read. We're starting to really see them work more as a team because they actually got the uniforms as well. But yeah, more mysteries about the how time works in the dark multiverse. So yeah. Finally, the back issue, and like I said, it's kind of related to that book, the Terrifics, and it's this book. Give me a second, because you really can see it, the back. So it's this book. So I decided to see if they had like any Tom Strong books at my shop because of the Terrifics. I got kind of curious about Tom Strong. Now this came out. This is Tom Strong issue number 2, uh, which came out back in 1999. The funny thing is, when I started going to comic shops a year later, in 2000, I used to see these books a lot. Kind of curious about him. Never really picked them up. But with the great thing about comics is when you reference something, you kind of get curious about that, so you kind of go and check them out. So I was kind of curious about Tom Strong, so I picked up issue number 2. They have a nice little, well, they don't have like full runs or anything, but there are quite a few issues of some of the stuff that came out of the ABC line. So I'm really gonna be checking those out. Really very pure sort of adventure, super heroic type story. the point being that Tom Strong actually sort of like the pulp version of Superman, the pulp adventure version of Superman. Uh, they even kind of had something which reminded me of Superman, which sorry, reminded me of something to Superman, which was the Tom Strong fan club called the Strong Men of America, which is a reference to the fan club this started with Superman called the Superman of America back, you know, in 1939, which kind of ran around the mid 60s. So I thought, that's a pretty cool reference to the Golden Age Superman, the fan club. But yeah, it's sort of like interesting take on the idea of Superman with where Tom Strong sort of is the Superman of this sort of much more pulpy, pulp science fiction type world. Um, uh, and soon, the traffics will be going to Tom Strong's universe. In the current solid setting, that's what they said. So yeah, it was a final read. I'll probably be picking up more of those. And actually, funny thing though is that the Tom Strong character was a homage back in the old Justice League cartoon, from the 2000s, when they did this sort of Justice League, their own version of the Justice League Justice Society crossovers, where they had a character called Tom Turbine, I believe, which was sort of served as a sort of Superman type character, but pretty much also kind of based on Tom Strong. So yeah, uh, great reads I got, and it's almost 30 minutes of this video. So uh, come back next week where I'll be talking about Man of Steel. I promise. I'll be talking about Man of Steel. Might might probably be, oh yeah, Man of Steel. I have a couple of other books I might pick up as well. But yeah, so come back next week, and until next time, keep smiling.